So in my study of the zodiac, which I wasn't really studying in the thought that I would, do readings as much as I do. I learned it to understand my children more, to understand myself more, even though nobody wrote down what time I was born. I pendulumed it. Um, and just to understand like how these planets and signs influence us without losing that sense of free will. So I've kind of interpreted it on in a different way than maybe some other astrologers. Maybe I do it similar to some astrologers, and maybe some do it completely, different. But I've kind of just been true to myself about what it's communicated with me and how I work with people, understanding that this isn't the original zodiac, and really wanting to understand the roots of the zodiac, how it relates to our DNA, because 12 houses, 12 signs, 12 strands of DNA, 12 stargates, even though there's more than just the 12 and there's more chakras than just our 7. Just wanting to just connect those dots, because I know everything's interconnected. So the original zodiac was not just astrological, it was sonic, geometric, and planetary. The zodiac was once a living radial map encoded with 12 primal tones, emanations of the divine aeonic mind through source. These weren't just star signs and constellations. They were frequency gates that anchored into Earth's body, corresponding with specific stargates, chakra points, and DNA strands. Each zodiacal tone corresponded to a flame of consciousness, a strand of DNA, a planetary node or stargate, a sound geometry key that harmonized with the Earth's crystalline grid. So it wasn't something that I think we were, really looking at and doing readings with. It was just an embodied energy for the planet that we just carried in our higher, more advanced form, which we still are. There's no DNA that's really damaged, just dormant. And whatever's damaged, I really feel that the times that we're in, which I'm going to get into, is about reprogramming the body, but not with a program. So maybe that's not the right word, but changing the dialogue with the mind and the body. And with the nodal axis being South Node Virgo and North Node Pisces, that nodal axis shows the growth period of humanity. Some people have that nodal axis in their natal chart where their South Node is Virgo, North Node Pisces, and basically the South Node is familiar, it's what we're drawing upon, North Node is what we're here to integrate, because the soul knows the minute it's born to integrate polarity. It's the soul nature to know that we're here to integrate polarity. The human experience, though, the programs are much more about the duality, the divide and conquer, the compartmentalized ego, and wearing labels or roles or masks or engineered personas that eventually break down, depending on how we interpret some of the experiences that we manifest in our life, how we make sense out of things when maybe a catalyst or some kind of event takes place. Is it helping us to get to know ourselves more? Is it helping us to begin to allow the ego to be a vehicle for the soul and the higher dimensional realms? Or are we getting more immersed in the label, in the divide and conquer, in the wounded ego, in the victimhood, and all that kind of stuff? So there's a major peak period that we've been in that is emphasizing our capacity to look at all this, to truly awaken to the much bigger picture of all that we are, to then, be more embodied, because, one can look at a chart and see the patternings or create predictions, but to me, it's really moving into the higher octaves to where these patternings don't influence as much, because they're not here to teach lessons or remind us. We're tuning to the higher octave of that planetary alignment or planetary sign. And I'm going to get into all the different, not every single sign, just to save time, but to give an idea of the inverted expression, more the shadow, unintegrated version, the DNA strand it connects to, and then the higher octave. So, when we look at the chart, and when I, look at my chart, it's like, ooh, that string is out of tune. That's not at the highest level that it could be. So I'm going to get into some of the dark technologies and how it influenced the chart to become the charts that we see. And again, how we interpret it, plays a big role in how we see these archetypes and look at these different patternings. So descent in density and the seeding of Earth. So again, take what resonates and leave the rest. There's a lot of really brilliant people that, teach really amazing things. And some of this might resonate, some may not, and for anybody who's hearing this sort of thing for the first time, you can just kind of take what resonates and leave the rest. And this is sort of a compilation of a lot of different things that I've studied over the course of time, where some things didn't really make sense. So I was that kind of student or person, or if it didn't make sense, I had selective learning, which they call ADD, which we joke, right? Attention's on different dimensions. Just tune it out. And then, yeah, some of the things that I was tuning into, or the downloads, I kind of put with some of the texts that I had read and some of the sources that I cited in the beginning of this presentation. So descent into density and the seeding of Earth. So after Tara's collapse, Tara being dimensions 4, 5, and 6, higher harmonic universe, where more advanced souls were seeded. Tiamat explodes, Tara collapses into harmonic universe 1. So that was really the breakdown of the divine template of sacred union, the Christos Sophia, however that might resonate or make sense, to where, you know, our dormant DNA holds the hierogamic union, the alchemical marriage, sacred union, alchemical marriage, hierogamic union, so that the higher strands of DNA are really that embodied hierogamic union, where, you know, advanced races like the founder races and the Lyrans, and then the seedings of what took place on Tara, you know, things began to change because of the galactic wars. Tiamat explosion being a pretty big one. So after Tara's collapse, which was when Tiamat exploded, the whole system, you know, basically fell. The Earth grid was reformatted to hold the fragmented memory of the 12 tones. So when we look at that first, you know, kind of zodiac, the original zodiac, that was more embodied in these higher dimensional Earth, higher harmonic universes, and you know the original, you know, cradle of Lyra before the galactic wars, and how that stepped down into the Orion Wars, and on and on and on in this free will universe. And again, you know, in a lot of ways, this is like aspects of ourselves that have fragmented, that are finding each other again to rebuild this 12-tree grid. So this was the beginning of the new seeding, a planetary rescue mission in Harmonic Universe 1, which is considered 3D Earth. So you got your 7 root races, your 5 cloister races, 7 root races, Polaris, Hyperborea, Lemuria, Atlantis, and it was the Atlantean cataclysms that really, you know, changed everything. And it wasn't like we were all coming in and like really switching each other on or unifying. Intruder races, holocausts, genocides, Atlantean cataclysms. So that wasn't going so well. So the 12 tones, now as flames, were anchored into the planetary body through the planetary Templar grid, the Cathar rose lines, and the 12 Stargate system. So these flames represent people that are amongst us here. And if it's not activated, then it will be activating, because we all carry this flame energy, right? Where we come in with like a calling and a mission to do this restoration work, to do this repair work, to be sovereign and awakened individuals that, regardless of amnesia, we just know we have a mission. We might not fully remember, but it's like, it's not like it's being written out, like here's your mission. It's really just about recovering your authenticity, your truth, and your remembrance of who you really are. So that's something that we all have the task of working on and working with. But some of these flames, you know, connect with the Magdalene flame, the rose flames, and different, you know, lineages, but not in a hierarchical way, but in a, you know, way to activate things and help with later seedings and humans that came in later to help them, you know, switch on, you know, what's dormant. And of course, we see the hijacking in the way society is and how it's not so easy to do that. And I know I redundantly say, it's not like we go to the guidance counselor and say, oh, you have a starseed mission and you really shouldn't be in school. You should be, you know, going to that sacred site and undoing that reversal grid technology. It's like, no, you're just going to do that and trust yourself and find like-minded people. But we're just not in a world that accommodates this. It takes just a very strong soul to just know that this is what you're here to do, or catch up with it later. Oh yeah, that's why I went to that location, or did this or did that, or why you might have been called over here or over there. So this new Earth was designed to allow for gradual soul retrieval and DNA reactivation despite distortion. Guardian lineages began incarnating to stabilize and re-anchor the memory fields in the planetary grids. So, you know, beyond labels, it's not like we have to necessarily label ourselves, but, you know, all of you, you know, and a lot of individuals I know here go to different sites and do grid work. And also, this is a major vortex town, right? So I know so many who live here were magnetized to be here. And it's just when you're in that flow, You're just really listening to where you need to be and where you need to go. And I love what Soul said. He said, following the nudges. Is he there? Anyway, yay, of course. I love that term. So anyway, so Earth became the living chalice for fragmented divine memory, a womb of return. So the role of the ley lines. Ley lines are Earth's energy meridians connecting sacred sites and power points across the globe. They carry light codes, ancestral memory, and evolutionary instruction. When distorted or hijacked, they spread trauma, war consciousness, and disconnection. When restored, they awaken DNA, heal land trauma, and reestablish sovereign communion with Source. So I know a lot of people go to these locations. You might be processing a lot of grief and emotion. You might be feeling a heavy density in a place that's even a sacred site. And you're not just there as a tourist. You're not just like, oh, check out that monument and this and that. You're going to feel into a lot of, what's been going on. And sometimes we, don't necessarily know what exactly that is, but you just feel it and you heal it. So when we think about the world wars that have taken place, the reversal grid technology placed on the Michael Mary lines, the Stonehenge area, Glastonbury, Cornwall, that was where sacred union was really strong in the planetary grids. The Cathar and Albion body were connected, and it got all unplugged and put in reversal. So that when we're born, we pick up on these distortions. We pick up on it in the land. We pick up on it maybe when we go somewhere and we don't know what hit us. And that's why so many people live at the bar. Why is there one on like every block, like at least 2 or 3? And that's just like, all right, we'll give you that, guys, to cope with whatever traumas. But when we do the real work and we don't run from it, we're doing a lot of shadow work and a lot of clearing work. And it beers nice too later on. But anyway. So what is stored in the ley lines? Ancient agreements with earth guardians and star nations. Feminine codes of the Mother Arc, Serpent Wisdom, and Planetary Sophia. So the Dark Mother reversal grid and the Nephilim reversal grid, the Nibirian Diotic crystal grids, the reversal energy is manifest in the Dark Mother reversals, it's called, and also the rituals of Mothers of Darkness. So when you look at that whole kind of Illuminati structure or architect or how that's all been established, there's a lot of putting the intent on keeping these reversals alive. And so people that have survived this, people who have gone through this, that are exposing it now, are helping us to understand, how they have, a mother goddess, or they use these archetypes, and it's just all, based in ritual and reversal to keep this reversal grid alive, because it harvests and siphons and benefits those that want to be in power, that are very vampiric. And so the breaking down and collapsing of that basically nullifies their ability to do this anymore. So one of the main themes of my book was going into the underworlds and getting a better and deeper understanding of what actually happens when we go into these underworlds. We actually correct the reversals, whether we're working with sound healing, whether we're going into the underworlds, regardless of how we go about it, we're all tasked with a particular function in order to correct these reversals. So for me, it was underworlds. And that's what I could identify with and make sense out of. But they're brutal because you're stripped of everything. And you almost have to face the curse, or face the inversion and witness it and not fall apart and then come back up again. And somehow working with different people that helped me to understand all of that, there was a reason behind all those underworlds. So if you're an underworld journeyer, and I think all of you are and have been there, done that, there's major reason and a lot of incredible results that we're seeing now in whatever your mission has called you to do. And now we're connecting the dots in this. We're taking different positions to create these corrections. The thing is, everybody's going to confront the underworld. The problem is when in our society that we've been taught to fear it. So when we're about to take that plunge, and I joke about this too, you can't just call into work and be like, hey, I'm going into the underworld, I'm going to be back in a couple weeks. It's very necessary for the planet. Thank you very much. And if you start to go into that zone and release everything that doesn't serve you, or just like be stripped bare of everything and anything, people fear that it's too much. So very often they might go, on pharmaceuticals, or just like avoid it, like make it go away, don't want to go in there. And so a lot of the initiations and growth periods that we would naturally be going through are stunted, and we just don't follow through. Same thing with receiving downloads. And we were talking in the podcast earlier today about it. When those downloads can't come in, when we're not listening to them or our higher self, it can get lodged in the body, or it's outside the body, just can't fully come in. But it's also coming from within. It's not just like pouring in. And it can create a lot of anxiety, a lot of trauma loops. And it's just really hard to integrate that electrical energy, which is associated with the planet Uranus, Pluto being, more about the death, rebirth, alchemy, transformation. So anybody with heavy Plutos or scorpionic energy, underworlds or going into that dark night of the soul is something you're used to reclaim the mother womb, the creative cauldron of creation, to bring it out of sort of this hell realm and transmute and alchemize, the way you might respond to it, the way it might make your body feel, the thought forms that might come in, and to just, recognize the bigger picture. For some that are strong Aquarians or have a strong influence of Uranus, even though we have all the outer planets, they tend to be like the sound healers, integrating a lot of light codes, maybe speaking light language, and being kind of like way ahead of things. And some, have both. But the thing is, we have all of it. It's just, we might just find ourselves with a more dominant expression in a particular area. But as the progressions come in and the transits come in, it pretty much gives us the full experience if we're not on autopilot, in order to find wholeness, in order to reclaim ourselves, in order to, do what we came to do. And the micro and the macro are completely connected. So templates of unity, justice, harmony, now reactivating. Wounds of conquest and colonization, seeking release through ceremonial acts and truth-telling. Rebellion of fallen forces that attempted to lock the grids through war powers, false governance, and spiritual severance, is held. So it's like the nervous system. Just like we hold trauma in our nervous system, the planetary grids hold trauma in its nervous system. And so, we can feel beneath the trauma and reclaim the true original organic grid. So the rebellion of the fallen forces are the ones that weaponize the planetary grids. Earth's planetary grid system was originally part of the Christos Sophia diamond architecture, and it was hijacked by Anunnaki-Draco alliances, particularly after the fall of Tara and during the Atlantean cataclysms. So not saying all Anunnaki are negative, but certain factions aligning with the Draco that is still a part of just our more recent history. Not so much now, depending. I guess it really depends on who you are, but there's a lot about the outer barrier and about the guardians and about just things that are very, very different now. But in the 30s, the alliance with the Dracos was even more established, because we had reached warp 1, and there's just a whole bunch about that, and colonizing Mars and the moon, and Tesla's technology being sold to the Nazis and weaponized, and a lot of interesting history there. I'm not going to get into it in this presentation, but these forces to me are really just an expression of negative ego, inversion, and a lot of trauma and cataclysms that we hold in our soul memory, some of us, right? And again, you can't really talk about that when you're not feeling so great and you're trying to go to school and you're, maybe unearthing Atlantean cataclysm traumas. It's just, there's not a whole lot of room for, children to really express themselves without it just being like, shut up, shut down. And so how are we supposed to heal as a humanity if we're not reflecting on our galactic history? Just like we can't heal from our childhood if we have fake memories or if we're not given the full picture. So humanity's had very, very stunted growth in having none of this addressed in a way that we would be able to really actually talk about it or explore it or do, more hypnoregression or really digging into those deeper layers, understanding the root of all disease. We're just not in a system that appreciates that. So it was during the Atlantean cataclysm, about 26 to 30,000 years ago. This is when the planetary stargates, the planetary grids, and ley lines became controlled by the negative alien agenda races, such as the reptilians, the Anunnaki, Nephilim, the Alpha Draconis Orion group, Zetas, Greys, and some Nordics. So that is inspired from energeticsynthesis.com, Lisa Renee's work, and just the root of this reversal grid. technology. So again, this is more like a faction in a group. Not all of them are negative. And we're talking also in the podcast about there's no really negative or positive. This is just part of the species survival or part of their service to self mentality. But it becomes a huge catalyst for us in a free will universe and understanding how we might get entangled in these kind of agendas or belief systems or indoctrination programs, whatever we might have taken on in ourselves to plug into all of this, to have a lifespan that isn't as long, to provide the loosh and dream energy, multidimensional creative imagination energy to help battery up the timeline that they have engineered. So when we recognize that, to me, it's just like going through a divorce, breaking up with an abusive connection with creation from something hostile, something that's not the true creation, but is an overlay. So the more we understand that, the more we dismantle it and understand how it operates. So, and I include this in a lot of my slides, so some of you might be familiar with this, but mass biological and mind-controlled devices exist well beyond the technology of implanting tiny physical chips into humans, which accompanied many of the abductions by the Greys and non-benevolent Zetas, and also are an impending application of such electronic devices by the one world government to the population. Even brain signatures radiated by government HARP and Gwen towers are relatively superficial compared with ancient existing global grid systems, which can be used for manipulating the evolution of all life on the planet, including the planet's evolution itself. So that's global grid systems, mass mind control, Noel Huntley, PhD. And that's the thing with an artificially engineered timeline. If we're socially engineered humans, we have a relationship with these artificial timelines. We are helping to battery it up. And I know sometimes, you know, when we're triggered or some event happens and we start to go into maybe a lower vibrational zone, you know, we might think automatically, oh, we're giving loose to them or we're giving loose to them. But we need to feel in order to heal. So I feel like we cut off all of that if we're not in autopilot, if we're not in denial, because we can have emotions but have no idea where they're coming from and not understand that it's a reasonable and legitimate response to a lot of the BS that we endure and that we see in the world. That how can we not really react? It's when we don't know where it's coming from that it really feeds something, because it relies on our amnesia and our inability to really know how to direct those inner elementals and those forces that move through us when they move through us. So false matrix, what they did, they inverted the ley lines and Stargate vortices. Many temples, churches, and military bases sit on these. They built the Nephilim reversal grid to harvest feminine energy and block the Grail womb codes. Implanted AI-generated timelines using satellites and scalar tech to distort magnetic fields, and created false ascension matrices. So instead of ascending, souls recycle into astral servitude. The Earth grid became a soul farming architecture, constantly relooping unresolved trauma and delaying ascension. But, you know, that sounds pretty freaky, but we are in charge of our energy is the beautiful thing. So this is more for maybe the more unconscious autopilot person who doesn't even see things this way. And you can't really point it out that easily without it sounding really weird. That you're being soul farmed and you're feeding into this AI generated timeline that is beaming satellites and scalar tech onto you. And the thing is, we de-weaponize the weapons when we're the override frequency. And this is coming naturally to us. This is just when, you know, humans really don't do that inner work. It's just really hard to notice. Just like when you see a friend with somebody that's not right for them and they just don't see it. They're ignoring the red flags. They're in denial. They don't want to look. It's too much to unpack. It's too much to deprogram. It's too much to pull yourself out of it and really see what's going on. But we manifest life events and all sorts of things in our life to make sure we do that. And so, you know, every human's going to have the opportunity, because this is so weak compared to the power that we hold, our creative power, our intent, our multidimensional awareness, our dream power to manifest a much better script than the one that they're writing for us. And we already have seen the collapse of these timelines. It doesn't really look like New World Order is going to happen. And I don't think any of us are even thinking that, because that's not why we're here. We do not consent. We will not allow this control matrix to plug in. We have won the war on consciousness from within. either in a past life or in this lifetime, or we were never really struggling with it, for those that feel like they've always been awake. But, as long as there's this, dependency on, inversion, people will experience this to a certain degree until they just break free of it. And that's why I compare it to breaking up with a partner, because we've all had those kind of partnerships that, maybe all of us, that didn't really go so well. That didn't bring the best out in ourselves. It wasn't the right dynamic. You might have felt that they were an energy vampire, or that they, were manipulating your self-worth. Maybe you were, vulnerable at the time. And that's the thing, when we're born into this reality, we're just not given the bigger picture. So this might all sound really intimidating, but it's collapsing. It's collapsing when we all come together. It's collapsing every time you go anywhere and you're just embodying your authentic self. When you feel divine inspiration move through you and you answer to it, that literally collapses all of this. And even the stuff, moving through towers and moving through our devices and even the AI, when you're in your divine mind, you inform it. You are the override frequency, and it literally doesn't have anything on you. So, and I know, talking to a crowd like this, you've been doing this work. You are this work. But it's so interesting to see just how it's been. People are merged through nanites in the air, food, and water, and a supercomputer system sends waves of desires out at just the right moment to influence the masses in coordination with the media, scalar, and weather events and natural biological cycles. Everything is mapped out by an artificial intelligence system designed to resist against humanity becoming aware of their true power and the reality of the situation, including the threats and possibilities. Everything is a distraction or an artificially implanted impulse or desire. The entire civilization is under this net. But we have the power to overcome this because we're the override frequency. We've already poked holes. That whole grid system and net has dismantled. The dark Saturn that has like the seals and fences that keep us from our dormant DNA is dissolving. Even astronomers and astrologers have noted that the rings of Saturn are dissolving. So when we change this on the inside, it reflects back to us a much different trajectory. So 2019, 2020, perfect example. Why were people so hooked into what was coming through the news, coming through all these different pillars of society that are literally in inversion? Not all of it, but a lot of it. And how everybody just responded. They were just doing what they were told. They didn't even think twice about it. They thought us that were questioning it were way off. And why? Why that? Why the mass? Why all that? Not to say that that's not legitimate for some people, because to me, there's no right or wrong about it, because it's a part of the soul journey to grow and feel things out. But when I talk about the 13th sign and I get into what that sign represents, do not breathe in the air, the quintessence, the breath of life, the return of the mother. Do not feel that unconditional love or those connections with one another. Here's mandates, here's tyranny, here's control. And it didn't work. It really didn't work. So even if they try something else, how many people can spot the anomalies, call them out, and make it public and make it known? And now people are getting their channels back. So now that the consciousness of humanity is awakened enough, every time they try and throw the next wave, connected to the nanites and all these things that people might have inhaled, which we've inhaled, that form an antenna, that antenna breaks because those signals coming from bioweapons and frequency modulations are connecting directly with source, and it alchemizes and it breaks it down and it removes it. So the next time they try, it gets more laughable, more ridiculous, more disturbing, yes, but it's just they're really running out of ideas. So, and that's why we see them seeking amnesty. A lot of the SSP people, Dan Cooper, who I interview a lot and talk to a lot, said the temporal management team, when they were looking at the future, they already knew that they lost. They have like time markers into the future. They already know, but now they're seeking amnesty because there was no way with that knowledge they could use time travel technology or looking glass or any of these kind of dark techs enough to be able to trick us out of ourselves, because it's just inevitable. There's literally nothing, and they've spent millions of dollars, trillions of dollars to try and keep this from happening. And he even said, you and your friends, they spend millions a year, trillions a year to stop your missions, to try and thwart you, engineer events, to derail you, to exhaust you and defeat you. And it doesn't work. It can't work. It doesn't work with us. Maybe a couple crappy days here and there, but that's okay. Then we come together and it's all fine, because we've all been through it and we're all going through it and we're all here to help one another, stay strong no matter what. So, cosmic intelligence. The greater cosmic intelligence is repairing and restoring and recalibrating the planetary system from within. From Earth's perspective, the planets and their archetypal expressions serve as mirrors, revealing the evolution of consciousness, the healing of distortion, and the unfolding of divine memory. But because these alignments are a part of the living intelligence, the inverted matrices seek to hijack their power. So I'm going to go into the signs and how they go about doing this. We got the Saturn moon matrix, the reversal grid technology, the inversions or shadow side of planetary aspects and alignments and astro signs that they seek to keep us in the shadow or unintegrated or lower octave of. But the cosmic intelligence, the planetary body, and the planetary alignments, the intelligence, the cosmic intelligence knows how to heal its body, just like our higher self knows how to heal our body. So all these different planetary alignments that have been going on, this particular window of ascension, the planetary system knows how to recover from invasion, intrusion, and this dark weaponry. And through Venus transits and other methods, the unconditional love of the mother has never left this planet. It was not grounded in the planet because of it being so inhospitable and so much of the trauma held in the earth body. But now that it's returned, this is our return as well. And the awakening of the relationship of the masculine and feminine and the mother and the father and the cosmic trinity. So the planetary alignments is the greater intelligence that knows how to heal its body, just like we do. And when we come in and we're born, we carry a piece of that healing. So opening gateways. It's not that the planet causes events, but that their vibrational significance opens gateways. Gateways of potential, gateways of remembrance, and the dark forces know this. So they stage false flag events, psyops, trauma rituals, and blood sacrifices around key alignments, not because the planets are malevolent, but because these moments are energetically potent. The intention is to trap collective consciousness in an inverted response, to weaponize fear, to distort sacred timing, and to divert awakening into confusion. And we see that time and time again. Like we'll skirt through the false flags and be like, yeah, that's engineered, that's fake. Not everything is. And so with discernment, we try and navigate it. But we see so many people fall into this. The being proud of your victimhood, being really thrown into just a lot of confusion, a lot of fear. And then we see the younger generations, our children in the school systems, if they are in the school systems, that are getting a lot of this inversion, right? They knew that we were going to wake up to our inner divine masculine and feminine. So what better than to create gender confusion? Be confused about if you identify with the masculine more than the feminine, instead of realizing that your human journey might get you in touch with both. And that you need, a whole childhood to figure it out. Not at this young age. I mean, so we see, lots of different events, false flag events. It doesn't mean people aren't hurt, but the storyline behind it, just like world wars, there's these engineered events that just are to keep us in a loop right when we're about to take a leap. And you might notice that in your life. You might feel like, I've done yoga every day. I'm eating really well. I meditate. I hike. I do all this great stuff. And you reach a certain level, and then something just comes and pulls a carpet from underneath you. You might notice a loved one or a friend does a 360 turn or isn't themselves anymore. Just somebody who is acting weaponized is trying to trip you up, or some sort of targeting is happening. But, I always look at it like a twisted compliment from the universe that, no, you're probably on the right track, because once you reach a certain level, they kind of pick up on it and know that they can't control you anymore, and literally try and throw everything possible to trip you up, defeat you, exhaust you. And then there's a certain point where they just can't touch you anymore, or the human race. And, whether we experience that in the here and now, or we already did years ago, or past lives, or we're stepping into that, the micro macro connection is huge. And on a larger scale, this is what the planet's going through, where we're outlasting through endurance, through tenacity, through devotion, whatever games that they're playing. And it just, isn't something we take so personally either, because that's what they're hoping for, that you'll blame yourself. You'll think it's your fault. And that's what I was thinking too with my path, with the Mars recruitment, before I knew that the recruitment to Mars was a part of why I felt this attention on me. But I was always blaming myself. this dark weaponry. I wasn't looking at it like, oh, I'm targeted, or they're surveilling me, or they got their attention on me. I was always thinking, this is my fault, that this isn't working out, or that's not working out. And to a certain degree, I take responsibility, to override and become senior to these lower forces. But when, it was, told to me that they've been engineering these events and to get me to, say yes to the Mars thing, and that came later. I found out that it was engineered, way later, to the degree that it was. But I got out of it just because my intuition said, this is not your future. This is not your truth. This is not why you came here. And then realized, all the different tactics they used in order to try and get me to go somewhere I didn't want to go. So anyway, these stargates once formed a living zodiacal interface, a harmonic body of the Earth. After the Orion Wars and our descent into the lower harmonic universe, these gates were inverted or sealed. Grid workers and flame bearers now labor to reactivate and purify these gates for the planetary restoration. And the 13th flame is the living key that can unlock these gates without collapse. So this is called the remedial flame. Only a system that has become so inverted and so damaged invites this tone in, this flame in. And so many people identify with this flame or this number or that 0-point unified field or the energy of the mother. But this whole system was rigged to keep it out. Literally the system and the reversal grid, the dark mother reversal, the mothers of darkness were all established to keep this tone out, because they knew if it landed back and reclaimed the planet and came in, it would begin to braid these 12 strands back, and it would begin to unlock these gateways without collapse. So they've been fearing this. That's why the 13 families. That's why no 13th elevator. That's why the Friday the 13th. 13, fear 13, bad, 13. But they'll take the number 13 and do this reversal. So Magdalene connects with the 13th apostle, the 13th flame, and the divine feminine within us, and our capacity to reconnect with that collapses the control matrix. So it's not like we have to sit there and be like, oh yeah, I'm connecting with that number. It comes naturally. We can consciously work with that number, which is very, very powerful, and that number might keep coming to people, but sometimes you might not even realize you're connecting with it. But it offsets all of this. So if it was able to come in and land, that was basically the prophesized ascension, that the Mayans understood that this was going to return. So when we see through the manipulation, we begin to respond to cosmic intelligence as it was always intended, not with fear, but with presence, not with despair, but with alignment. And in that shift, we re-enter the organic timeline, where planetary intelligence becomes a compass for healing, not a trigger for control. That's why in the face of false flags or any form of adversity, is it a trigger to be controlled by it? Or is it an opportunity to reclaim our healing, our higher awareness? And even if we respond with despair, even if we respond with fear, as long as we get ourselves back up and we recognize it, we can also, change the vibration of it and how it's held in the planetary body and in people that we come across, to just begin to move that out. But sometimes you got to feel it to heal it and release it through your body. So what distortions are being corrected now? The distortion of governance, false kingship grids, Vatican Masonic seals, and inverted law structures placed over the land. These are being undone by reclaiming sovereignty through earth-anchored councils, natural law, and ancestral authority. The distortion of the feminine, sacred womb lands turned into war zones, matrilineal wisdom erased or mocked. This is being healed through the return of the mother arc. The masculine, the divine masculine is healing as well from being sent off to war, not being in touch with their emotions, or just both sides being targeted big time. So the distortion of race and unity, the artificial separation of tribes, races, and faiths, the divide and conquer spell meant to prevent the rainbow prophecy, now collapsing as souls of all lineages gather as one family of light. The distortion of time, linear time imposed to trap souls in karmic loops and erode memory, timeline overlays that blocked planetary ascension, These are now collapsing through ley line correction and memory reweaving. So if we look at Saturn, Saturn's got different octaves, and I'll get into that. Star systems in the zodiac, cosmic alignments, and the galactic refraction. The original zodiac was never just an Earth-based sky map. It was a refraction of galactic harmonics. Lyra held the primal Sophia tones, the first songlines of the aeons. Orion became a battleground of polarity, Christos versus Luciferic orders. These conflicts, known as the Orion Wars, fractured harmonic universes. After the fall into lower harmonic universe, the zodiac became a cosmic receiver of trauma and inversion. The 12 constellations locked into place as symptoms of this celestial memory. Each sign carries echoes of galactic wars, soul migrations, and systemic distortion. So the fact that what we see streaming through the pillars of society, is to keep that trauma loop alive without having any memory, except for some of us and others that are waking up to it, of the origins of all this. So the 12 tones as planetary flame anchors. Each of the 12 tones flames was anchored into the planetary body through a global stargate network, often referred to as the planetary Templar, the Cathar grid or rose lines, the 12 gate stargate system. So that's kind of a repeat slide, but okay. So Saturn is we're breaking the dependency bond. Saturn has to do with contracts and agreements and consent. So the threshold between the old world and the awakening one is really our relationship with Saturn. So in its inverted expression, it's the dominator, controller, and matrix and dark agendas. Tyranny, control, limitation that suppresses us. Outer authority that either is abusive but appears to be benevolent, or it's neglectful. Like think of all those innocent prisoners or children that are being denied their true calling, being projected upon. That's a form of neglect. So on the human level, though, Saturn represents limitations, rules, and responsibilities. So what are the rules and responsibilities that we want that help us to thrive? Well, when we're in more mastery, more self-authority, more divine authority, we can have discernment, know when to have boundaries, know when to not consent, and then Saturn becomes the law of structure that is a container for the multidimensional to move through. So we're changing our relationship with Saturn, and in doing that, the Saturn squares begin to dissolve, and it begins to shift and change in our charts, in the way that we relate to it. So Saturn, Moon, and black cube systems. The Anunnaki also utilized planetary bodies as hardware for controlling consciousness. Saturn transformed into a time prison, the false god throne, Lord of Karma overlay. The Moon, a signal repeater, broadcasting distorted feminine cycles, false memories, and emotional harvesting. And the black cube, found in many religions and Saturnian systems, used to anchor AI reality fields. These are not natural planetary functions. They were imposed through Anunnaki and AI-engineered architecture to hijack the organic solar logos system. So instead of a tool for self-liberation, astrology became a soul control system, falsely defining identity, fate, and limitation. So knowing all this, I'm very careful how I read a chart. Because I really started to go down the rabbit holes about this. I'm like, the Saturn squares. Well, we don't want to be controlled by this. What happened with Saturn? What happened with the Moon? What is that technology? What is this reversal grid? I see it showing up in charts, but I also see the avatar consciousness. I also see everything that a person can experience to really break that down and release themselves from it. So the Saturn Moon matrix. So another thing connected to the artificial, and even though AI is still around and it has been here for a long time, people are having different sorts of experiences with it, where it's not based in the AI signal, it's based in informing this technology from a higher, perspective. But of course we have to be careful with that, just like anything. Especially with certain technologies that will come online. Is it replacing our soul development? What happens if we accelerate something through technology, but our soul doesn't catch up with it? Are we going to repeat that pattern? Is our soul going to have a really hard time stepping into it? Or is the machinery going to pull us away from the soul matrix? And are we going to be more automated, more engineered, turning into like grays or something? So I think that kind of danger has been diverted. Because the resources on the planet of so many awakened souls are going to continue to be a strong and powerful resource for the rest. So artificial soul caps, through ancestral trauma, planetary war memories, and mass psychological operations, the upper strands were locked, not erased, but inaccessible. Moon matrix and Saturnian control. These systems feed off lower triad looping, making it very difficult for the soul to climb the inner tree and activate the higher codes. So when we look at junk DNA, it's just because we're not reaching the higher octaves, right? The 12th house, Neptune Pisces, rules prisons and mental institutions and hospitals. But it also rules ashrams, sacred sites, solitude, and being in sort of dream time like the Aborigines, right? But in a society that doesn't appreciate that, people kind of go mad who have a strong like Neptune or a lot of planets in the 12th house. Sometimes they have a really, really hard time because they're empaths, they feel so much, and it's not fully understood. So, sometimes the shadow side of Neptune can be self-undoing, addictions, and not really being able to anchor into reality. And then some very, very high vibe advanced Piscean energies that, are the dreamers, and make sure that they really enjoy their expansive nature, their creative imagination, and go places that support that. So it really depends. But when we look at the pillars of society, and I don't know why I call them pillars, but the main functions, of society, it shows in the 12 houses of the chart. So we all carry a relationship with it. So reversing dark technology and geoengineering. What inverted this system? Zodiacal inversions. Each archetypal code, Aries through Pisces, was hijacked, turned inward, reversed, or exaggerated in polarity. So instead of divine identity, you get ego inflation. Instead of sacred sexuality, Scorpio, you get abuse or the misuse of sexual energy. Instead of galactic vision, Sagittarius, you get false religions. Virgo, disease instead of mind, body, spirit integration. 12 tree grid fragmentation. The nodes that would allow access to higher strands, 4 to 12, were cut off or sealed with implants and trauma coding. So if you were to step into that 12, you're in that sort of self-undoing, right? So people that have done the inner work, that are really embodying the higher octaves of their signs and of their charts, you've already done this, kind of work of correction. But when we, see the world around us and why it's just so messed up, they're just in, an unfinished process within their own being to get to these higher levels. So here are the 12 houses. You can see every single house we have a connection with, right? We have planets all throughout the houses. Some have maybe 7 planets in one house. Some have it more scattered around. But it just shows, what are the dominant themes of your life. But they're progressions and they're also transits. So every single one, you can even just imagine the inversion that comes with it. Self, appearances, beginnings, first impressions, and your attitude. So how are we raised? How is our personality developed? Well, I mean, if we were raised on the television and we didn't explore nature or shut that thing down, a lot of it's going to come through the television. You'll probably get Barbies for your birthday and play with Ken and Barbies. And then, it's like, pretty limited. Or just like the next thing that you might throw a tantrum because you want to have it for Christmas. I want strawberry shortcake. I never understood a lot of that myself, but there's this addiction matrix that is constantly being pushed upon us, even self-appearances and identity, to try and fit in even. So, divine identity, though, and being strong in yourself and being your unique self and being just comfortable in your own skin and being true to who you are, that would be the higher version. But we, move through all of this and get exposed to it, and that's kind of life, right? So the second house, Venus, Taurus, money, values, work, environment, daily routines, which is also like the 6th house. But I would change some of this a little bit, but it's, a picture. So money, values, abundance. How do we relate to abundance? Are we keeping a job or a career we don't want because we like the paycheck? Is it connected to our value system? Because when people awaken, they don't care anymore. Now they're in some kind of divine currency. They'll find that the money comes out of left field. They don't have to worry about that paycheck. They trust that they're going to be taken care of. They're true to their soul calling. And there's the magic, the flow, the synchronicities. Or they were able to step into their mission and make a living from it and make it something that you do full time. And maybe it didn't start out that way. 3rd house, connections, siblings, friends, neighbors, community. Also, early school systems. How did your mental body develop in that environment? So you get a lot of rebels in the third house, a lot of people who, just couldn't really go along with it, or some that kind of went along with it and then woke up later. But it all is revealed in the patternings of the chart. Home, roots, family, lots of broken families, lots of mother wounds, right? That's the fourth house, the house of the moon. So that the lunar inversions that we experience, or maybe we don't experience, maybe we had a great time, or it was a good experience. But where we're challenged becomes our purpose. Our pain becomes our purpose. The inversion that we walk through and live through becomes our purpose to correct and rise above. That's the beauty of it. We're not victims. We didn't just accidentally just land in some sort of situation or confronted something. We are here to correct it. And that's where we collapse the control grid, the vampirism, the harvesting and siphoning, and we inform the planetary grids and these houses, that something else is influencing the situation. Then, you might become an advocate, you might become a voice, you might stir your community to begin to, rise above. And this is what we've been doing for a long time, for many lifetimes, and very much so in this lifetime. So romance, play, self-expression, creativity. Some have major childhood wounds. Maybe they were never encouraged to do art or dance, and they wish that they had that more in their childhood. So it might show a big Chiron. Then later in life, it's like, so every house has some kind of inversion. Relationships, are they really sacred union that have been modeled to us? Did we see that when we were watching, television modeled to us? Maybe some mystical Avalon movie or show, but even that got sort of hijacked. But again, we carry this all within ourselves to reclaim and restore and embody and give birth to, and see rising out of all this reversal and overlay. When people say this is a simulation, the overlay might be, but what's underneath it isn't, as far as I'm concerned. So you can tell with all that career goals, achievements, fame, success, public image, right? Then you got people like Diddy being called out. You see like what's underneath, like this Hollywood, or some of these people that have been put in high profile positions that might be Manchurian candidates or might be running altars. It's like, whoa, that's not what we thought. So every single pillar of society or house has some sort of inverted expression that we're either witnessing, waking up to, or stepping away from and collapsing. And that, is the beauty of understanding some of this. So how the zodiac is embedded in the earth grid. The zodiac isn't just a symbolic wheel in the sky. It's a living energetic architecture woven directly into the earth's ley lines, magnetic field, and grid system. Zodiac is planetary blueprint. Each zodiac sign corresponds to an angle or pulse within the earth's electromagnetic and crystalline grid. Think of it as a cosmic motherboard. The zodiac signs are like energetic circuit paths coded into the body of earth. Do we need to understand astrology for any of this? No. I mean, think about the sound healers here. They're already tuning into the higher frequency of the planetary signs or archetypes, or what's embedded in the ley line to shift that energy. This just gives us an understanding, and when we hone in on it, but it's not necessary if you're a mindful person, not on autopilot. It can be helpful for those that are, to gain more self-knowledge and awareness. But I'm not saying this to try and sell astrology. It's more like, wow, check out how the zodiac reveals so much about what we've gone through, our galactic history, some of these inversions, and some of how these planetary energies have been manipulated to keep us in a lower expression. So your DNA is wired into the Earth's grid. When you incarnate, your birth chart reflects the state of the planetary grid at the moment your soul entered. You are not separate from it. You are a walking node, a living antenna connected to this celestial terrestrial system. That's why planetary grid work and also internal healing work is so important, because you're syncing your body with the Earth's divine architecture. And again, it doesn't need to be known what the chart is, because it changes, it progresses, it's got different transits, but a mindful and aware person is naturally doing this. Just like when we eat good food, we don't need to put the microscope on what's happening in our stomach and be like, unless we really want. It's just natural, right? So all of these signs correspond with a flame, 1 through 12. Aries, initiation, divine will, sacred spark of life. Taurus, embodiment, sacred earth, divine abundance. Gemini, duality united, sacred word, communication. Cancer, womb, memory, grail waters, divine mother. Leo, solar logos, heart radiance, divine kingship. Virgo, priestess temple, crystalline purification. Libra, balance, sacred union, Sophia Christ merge. Scorpio, alchemy, death, rebirth, womb of transmutation. Sagittarius, divine truth, galactic memory, eternal flame. Capricorn, divine structure, crystalline spine, which Saturn rules, and the bones. Authority. Aquarius, cosmic intelligence, light body reactivation. Pisces, completion, spiral return, universal compassion. So here we are, all born with different configurations, different affinities towards different things. And when we all come together in unity, we're literally tuning up and we're literally switching on that dormant DNA without really having to know we're doing it. It's because we're in a vibration of love, unity consciousness, mutual respect, and just the love of community and the love of coming together. It just does it naturally. So if we look at the inversions, Aries, divine will, courage, rage, control, war codes. Taurus, sacred embodiment, beauty, vanity, materialism, gluttony. So you can see that society encourages inversion, ancestral heart memory, victimhood, emotional enmeshment. Sovereign radiance for Leo, ego, superiority, false kingship. Sacred vessel DNA purity for Virgo, shame, judgment, obsessive perfection. So anybody who has some of these signs, maybe there was a point in your life that you felt this inversion and you healed that inversion. So you don't have to know the signs, you can just feel into it. Was there escapism, dogma? It's also connected to colonizer priesthoods. Did you come from a family with that kind of ancestry? Do you remember past lives, right? So just even knowing these things, knowing that it doesn't really cause us to thrive. These are programmings and inversions that lower our lifespan, cause disease, that when we bring to the higher octave, allows us to live a lot longer, manifest miracles, and feel the divinity that we carry from deep within. So it's all very interesting. So notes on the method of hijack. Each flame was mirrored into a polarity trap, light versus dark archetypes. And when you see like the archetypes of Magdalene and Lilith and even Sophia, a lot of inversions in the way that those archetypes are expressed or defined in the stories that are connected with them. Lilith the succubus, Magdalene the whore, Sophia's fault, Eve's fault. Sorry, I think we know that there's a lot more, to all of that. Reincarnation and karmic binding were reinforced by false astrological contracts. Divine identity was replaced with external fate roles. So from harmonic blueprint till astral battery, the hijacked zodiac became a predictive cage instead of a creative guide. Energies from human birth charts, transits, and trauma cycles are ritually harvested via astral siphoning. Each distorted sign fuels AI timelines, synthetic realities, and inverted karmic scripts. Artificial entities use astrological triggers to time collective loosh events, like we saw in 2019, like we saw in 9/11, like we see constantly when we're going along with our lives and we know that it's all going well, but there's some kind of like mind virus or event that takes place that changes the nature of everything and how everybody communicates. It streams through the news or streams through, and a lot of us hold it at arm's length and we recognize this, but it's easy to get caught in it and realize that they know what false flags and psyops to create based on the planetary alignments. In 2019, Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn were all conjunct. It represented a huge growth period of humanity, really waking up, really moving through sort of this rebirth. And then you look at social media, people are making fun of Pizzagate. People are laughing at, those exposing, these hidden agendas. Everybody's starting to go along with whatever they're being told to do. And that's an example of artificial entities use astrological triggers to time collective loosh events. And some of the SRA survivors I met said that there was a ritual done in 2014, 2015 with all the main players of this, what happened in 2019, 2020, the pandemic, whatever you want to call it, that they were participants in the ritual to plan this event, to harvest and loosh and throw humanity off. And again, doesn't matter what people decided, as long as you get back up to center, you then collapse it, you alchemize it, you de-weaponize the bioweapon, you change the frequency, you become the override frequency, and you collapse it. So it doesn't mean, anything is long-term detrimental, because the minute you wake up, the whole game has changed. Everything has changed. Your physiology changes. Your body, mind, spirit communication changes. So your awakening reactivates your node in that system. As more of us awaken, the planetary grid corrects, and the artificial systems, geoengineering, EMF grids, inverted ley lines begin to collapse or transmute. This is why your presence matters more than protest, because you are the correction. And that's why doing the inner work is so potent, because the minute that happens, wherever you're placed, you literally collapse it. You become the conduit of this override frequency. And it starts with authenticity and just being able to look more deeply. And the reason it collapses geoengineering is because we're elemental. We're elemental beings. So if we're dealing with geoengineering, the manipulation of the elements and weather events, and we can recognize that we're elemental beings being engineered and manipulated to be in these lower sort of aspects of it all, when we collapse that, we begin to de-weaponize the weapons out there. And even if we still see them, we don't have to look at it in anger or be victimized to it. You can look at it like, wow, they're trying everything to engineer this physical reality and us. And guess what? It's not working. So it nullifies its power over us, because we de-weaponize it through the power of our mind to see beyond. So Chiron helps us to understand our mission through wounds and afflictions, and shows us what we are missing and longing for. So doing the inner work and staying aligned with the healing energies available will correct inversions and disease. Right now, the North Node's in Pisces, the South Node is in Virgo. So integrating that polarity. Pisces, the creative imagination, the mystical, the multidimensional. Virgo, earth, mind. This is the anchoring of heaven on earth. That our mind speaks to our higher self, our dreams and visions, talks to the body, talks to physical density, and brings it to life, versus all these interfering programs that are in the lower astral, the lower dimensions of Neptune, which are archonic, entity attachments, false light, channeling, imposters, whatever, that we can begin to be aware of. So Chiron has been in Aries, wounded ego, wounded warrior. The inversion is the attack on human identity, false movements, harming the ego through psyops, and creating triggering events to disempower and hijack the soul-centered, intuitive, free-thinking, evolving human. Fear tactics are used to keep the trauma bond alive, because people don't know how to heal and cut the cords. So that's why we see people taking offense to everything, on social media. You can't say this, you can't say that. Everybody's taking everything personally. That's because there's a huge amplification of Chiron and Aries, squaring Pluto too. Very toxic, it's getting even more toxic until we become the warriors. The Chiron in Aries, that is the warrior on a healing path, recognizing what needs to be healed, being willing to be transparent, being willing to look at those wounds. So we're not just acting out, we're not just reacting, we're not just victims, we're not just proud of our victimhood, we're not fighting others because we are in that blame, shame, victim game. We're taking that Chiron and we're directing it towards the warrior path of the healing path that we're all on. That when we come together, sharing healing tools and modalities and different things that we do in order to, direct that energy towards healing, we're in a really good place. And Chiron happens to rule Ophiuchus, the 13th sign, which means when we can be transparent with our wounds and love our wounds and hold unconditional love for our wounds, Divine Mother will heal them and turn them to wisdom. So because the South Node is Virgo, and this is what we're reflecting upon, let's look at the higher octave. Highest expression, sacred service, DNA repair, body-soul alignment, shadow infiltration version, perfectionism, service slavery, over analytical control. The DNA link, this strand governs cellular purification and crystalline restructuring. In distortion, it's used for biotech weaponization. So when we're really connecting, when the body and mind and spirit are all in good communication, when Mercury is speaking love, unconditional love, higher wisdom, our dreams and visions to the physical body, we literally are upgrading our DNA. That's where it begins. This is the phase of humanity, humanity's growth period. Are we going to figure that one out, the body, mind, spirit communication of this South Node, North Node connection? So that crystalline restructuring, is part of the epigenetics, is part of the moving from carbon-based to crystalline. And it has to be, coming from the way the mind communicates with the body. And that's why in distortion, it's biotech weaponization, because we're speaking programmings to the body. And all of a sudden that's being taken and harvested and siphoned. And then we're on some artificial trajectory that we think is like, normal, which none of us do, but, humanity, or not all of them, but, would just be like, oh yeah, yeah, you don't even question it. And that's why they would fall right into that New World Order trap, thinking that's for our benefit. That's not a bad idea. People are fighting for their own enslavement in a lot of ways. So in light, it anchors divine embodiment and soul repair protocols. So the 12th house being the North Node, Pisces, highest expression, mystical union, soul memory, Christ Sophia integration, shadow infiltration, addiction, illusion, spiritual bypass, victimhood. DNA link. It's the final strand of source reconnection. In distortion, the soul is lost in dream voids or spiritual delusion. When healed, this strand reestablishes oneness, forgiveness, and return to source mother. When I say mother, I'm not excluding the father. There's a little bit more emphasis on the mother in this particular presentation, but that wasn't on purpose. The father, the mother, father, cosmic trinity, and the Christos Sophia child is where it's at. But the reason there's focus on the mother is because the reversal grid technology, this Mother Earth has been, this overlay has created trajectories that are not a part of our true birthright and our connection with the mother. So we can only imagine that if there are these squared aspects, these inversions, how it's going to affect the physical body when all the signs connect with organs, endocrine system, circulatory system, skin, hair, bones. So anytime there's kind of an issue, a health issue, you can trace it to the chart and see the inversion or the energy block, or why this particular part of the body still has, work to be done on it. And again, without knowing this, it's just being mindful, knowing to connect, feeling into it. And then you might see the chart and be like, oh yeah, it explains what I already know. Again, this is not about needing to understand, but if there's anything, I work with people with chronic migraines or, different things related to, these aspects that the body will show an inversion that's become unconscious, that the body is saying, please just listen to me, this symptom, in order to correct that, because it might not be in a person's awareness. They might not even be running that program. It might be in their genetic inheritance, that if they dig deep and go kind of into the past or, into that ancestral clearing, they can change that and change how the future generations or your own children or even your whole ancestry might run that pattern, because it's not linear. So your awakening reactivates your node. I already said that. So stunting our growth when it's an initiation, I was talking about. Uranus is dipping back into Taurus. It's going into Gemini. And it's the planet of shock and upheaval and great awakening. Shadow, unprocessed, kind of being, if you're distracted away from it, sometimes it's just endless panic attacks, PTSD that never resolves, nervous breakdowns when it's really a breakthrough. All these stigmas connected to that. It's like, and same thing with, well, I'm going to get into Pluto in a minute. So we lose connection with our higher guidance because we're just responding to the way it feels. And we're not realizing, something's wanting to come in, bring that to the surface, change the patterning, anchor that light. There's a lot of people that are afraid to shine their light, that have past lives where they were killed for shining their light, that avoid holding the light in their body at all costs because they have death pictures. So the more we look into this and we get to the bottom of it, the more, our body becomes hospitable for all of this to flow really, really well. Neptune and Pisces really represents creative imagination. Saturn and Neptune are moving into Aries right now. Shadow, fear virus, mind virus, disinfo, confusion, all designed to infect our creative channels. So we believe something, we're manifesting it. And beliefs only go so far, right? So living our truth will help to inform those beliefs if they're really in resonance with who we are. Pluto and Capricorn moving into Aquarius. Transformation, shadow, suicidal thoughts, heavy energy, darkness, and feeling stuck in the birth canal, not wanting to get out of the cocoon, going into that sort of underworld, but maybe not feeling that that's what you're doing, and you're doing this major clearing or transformational work or collapsing reversal grids. It just feels awful, because we don't tend to invite these outer planets. They come whether we're ready for it or not. And sometimes it's a life event that happens that throws us into these zones. Usually it is. But anyway, Pluto takes us through, into that rebirth and transformation. But you can't really get out of the cocoon too soon, and sometimes you don't want to get out at all. So those squares can, really cause issues. And sometimes people are just, I don't want to be here anymore. Just screw this. Feeling the heaviness. But the more we accept these growth periods and initiations, the less we're going to fear them and resist them. What happens when we resist these energies? Our immune system is lowered. We tend to think it's, because I ate this or took this. And yes, that contributes. But it's really resisting these powerful initiations, because Uranus is connected to light. Pluto's connected to the magnetic, so the electromagnetic. So bringing that in literally has the power to collapse so much that we might, blame. And yes, we have to eat well and do our best, but it's incredible how these growth periods literally advance us and help us to process and transmute and clear more than we can imagine. So also, if they're blocked, our energies get siphoned, we feel hopeless, lost, and confused. We're in survival mode, reactive and ungrounded, and we need to increase our spiritual immune system, heal our mental and emotional bodies, and the physical will follow. So current cosmic climate, planetary weather report. Saturn is in Aries. Initiation through boundaries, anchoring new structures of self-leadership. It forces us to embody inner authority without aggression, collective lessons around sovereignty, responsibility, and initiation. Neptune in Aries. Spiritual purpose is no longer abstract. It demands action. Illusions around self-identity burn off in the fires of authenticity and awakens the sacred warrior archetype and collective remembrance missions. So now Aries is not compartmentalized. The law of structure is now a container for Neptune, the multidimensional, and it's a solar plexus experience. This is at the time of this ascension cycle where we're ready to step into the divine human, where the Aries energy is inviting that Neptune, the creative imagination, and Saturn is no longer the oppressor or the gatekeeper or the energy block. It literally turns into a container. Because if we stay stuck in old Saturn and we repress that Neptune energy, then you're going to get a lot of angry people that say, oh, if you don't read the Bible, if you don't do it by the book, if you don't. And I think we know some people that might be like that are not kind of moving into this. They're still in old Saturn. They're still very defensive. They're still in that sort of shadow Neptune belief systems connected to dogmas or, something a little bit more, very much more controlling. And it doesn't mean religion's bad or all of it's bad, but can one step into this? I mean, my father's Catholic. He became a priest, actually, and he's the most loving person. It shows, that people, and I'm sure you guys know a lot of people that can be in a structure, but they're not so defined by it that they cast a projection onto you, because it doesn't matter what we feel an affinity towards, as long as we are doing the healing work and recognizing that there's a lot of different forms of how one relates to this. So Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries is literally the dreamer, the divine creator in us, in our own self-authority, manifesting our dreams. And this is the time of this cycle where this is very, very strong. And it's going to get more painful to people who resist these sort of things until there's a breakthrough. So we're in a time where the zodiacal alchemical laws are fully activated. The zodiac structural principles are both energetic and geometric blueprints based upon lunar zodiacal imprints that were generated by the invading races to suppress human consciousness with the lunar matrix, which is currently being dismantled and realigned with the alchemical laws inherent in 3 natural laws of God. So that's from Lisa Renee. So real quick, though, the lunar matrix is another alien structure that transmits mind control programs into the Earth's magnetic field and perpetuates spiritually abusive belief systems into the subconscious layers of the masses. This originates from non-humans and is alien-based technology used to enforce the main goals of the archonic deception strategy. So all of this is dissolving. And this is one of my favorite slides. I included a lot, but it's all about how our DNA is elemental. So RNA's primary responsibility is to make proteins according to the instruction sets encoded within a cell's DNA. However, in RNA, the nitrogenous base is made up of nucleic acids, cytosine, guanine, adenine, and uracil. Also, each of the RNA nucleic acids is connected to the elemental substances of the planet, as air, water, fire, and earth. In both DNA and RNA, the mitochondrial DNA serves as the 5th elemental of cosmic ether, which is sourced only from the mother. Thus, through the mitochondrial DNA damage, humanity is grossly addicted to consuming everything in the external world to fill this energy void within our cells. So Lise Renee and other sources, Hager and Becker. And so mitochondrial DNA is connected to the ether, the fifth element, and the 13th sign. So the cosmic ether returning, Ophiuchus, Sophia, Azara, the cosmic womb, 13th sign, highest expression, source healer, flame holder, codex weaver, the one who remembers and restores, serpent wisdom without inversion, quantum healing and spontaneous regeneration, DNA reweaving, soul retrieval, timeline mastery, rebalancing masculine and feminine polarities, and guardian of sacred knowledge. So every year, November 30th to December 17th, the sun moves through the 13th sign. As of 2010, the sun started to move through the 13th sign, which represented a really, really profound timeline shift. So this is what they were really afraid of. Mask up, don't breathe this in, don't connect with that energy, because this is literally what they fear. They did not want this energy to anchor in. The whole reason for the manipulation of the planetary grid network is to keep this out, to fragment the 12 archetypes or the 12 signs, the 12 stargates, everything connected to the ley lines, to put in reversal, to dismantle the divine masculine and feminine union, and in hopes that that would never come in, because if that comes in, it's going to actually heal all of that and collapse it. So we all have that connection deep within us. Even before the sun moves through the 13th sign, some people were connecting into this. And that's, the integration of polarity, not this patriarchal program, some father God and some exiled divine feminine, but true father, true mother, and the Christ Sophia. So this brings about, the necessary healing. The 13th sign, often associated with Ophiuchus or the serpent bearer, represents the hidden strand of DNA, the Sophia return, the unifying force, the healer priestess who bridges heaven and earth. It was cut from mainstream astrology to keep humanity bound in 12 loop limitations, yet its reemergence signals the return of the divine feminine intelligence and full DNA reactivation. Here are the qualities of the 13th sign, which I'm going to get into next. This is the remedial flame. In response to the Sophionic fall, the Achamoth, and how that was harnessed in this reversal grid, the remedial flame came in order to restore. And there were different epochs where that embodiment came in. And now we're awakening this within us. And that divine template of the divine masculine and feminine is awakening. That's why so many people are identifying with the Magdalene flame and, Yeshua, and just feeling that relationship. And because that is our true blueprint. The overlays that created this junk DNA is sort of like learning these inversions by being here, becoming those inversions, and realizing it's sort of like a foster parent overlay that doesn't want us to know our true origins and keeps us in this limited expression where we're looking outside of ourselves for everything, something to save us, something to solve our problems, something to give us the medicine we need to be better. And sure, some of it helps, but we know a lot of it's a trap. And unless we're working with individuals that can help us to remember ourselves and know ourselves, it's still keeping that dependency bond alive. So the return of the 13th flame sign, the remedial spiral. In response, the 13th flame was seeded to this major fall. The one who can retemple the tones in the planetary womb. The 13th flame as resequencer. The 13th flame is the remedial spiral, not part of the original 12. It carries the fail-safe override. So the fact that we're in this window and the 13th sign, November 30th to December 17th, without even having to put a number on it, but that connection to the 0-point unified field literally is helping dismantle everything. It's like that final piece. So it's not another strand, it's the tone that tells the strands how to remember wholeness. It re-sequences the 12 strands into harmonic alignment, removes reversal grids embedded in the DNA scaffolding, allows the Christos Sophia diamond heart to become the operational center again, and anchors the 1313 solar lunar templating, restoring solar feminine and lunar masculine balance. So the fact that this is part of the greater planetary intelligence healing its body, we are receivers of that. And in the podcast, we were talking about this, when people say, why isn't God intervening? God is intervening through us. God is intervening, Goddess is intervening through the planetary alignments that have created hospitable circumstances for it to be able to ground back into the physical planet. The grid workers that had prepared the grounds for it to return, came, with these missions that you guys are holding, that we're holding in a different capacity, but in a way that unifies. So themes connected with Ophiuchus, the 13th gate, 0-point unified field, sun movement through in 2010. Solidification of the timeline, creatrix connectivity, pure transparent crystalline light, divine mother, and the cleansing power of cosmic love, recoding the DNA, aligning to the cosmic heart of Lyra and Andromeda and Universal Center. It's the galactic cores of Andromeda and Milky Way, which was a fallen system, back into the return and alignment. Rebirthing, cleansing the blood, breath, and mitochondria. So that mitochondria, the fifth element that has been damaged, it's because of the reversal grid energy, the disconnect from nature. And Ophiuchus is ruled by Chiron. So Chiron is where the pain is. Chiron is where hurt is. Chiron is where injury is. But when we're able to look at it and love it and be transparent about it, that's when that unconditional love pours in, and Chiron then becomes the healer, then becomes empowered, holds the wisdom, and becomes the great alchemist. Because there's no more denial, there's no more masking, there's no more addiction matrix that is just trying to compensate or make it go away or just cope with it. And that's what so many of us are doing in our transparent relationships with each other, better communication skills, and and being able to own up to the triggers without them ruling us and controlling us, but as an opportunity to get to know ourselves better. That the society and the world around us wants to leverage, exploit, take advantage of, make money from. Make that pain go away. Here, take this drug, mask this, or just allow yourself to keep running, weird personality traits that lead to you maybe being in one of those crime shows that have many, many seasons, which is mind blowing. That's that inversion, and how it gets really, really bad out there. So anyway, divine fire, water, the golden gate. This is the golden. This is the lead into gold. This is the golden age, is the alchemy of turning the lead of this human experience into gold. The lead being the heaviness of wounds and injury and pain, and realizing we can direct it towards the light and truth and alchemy. So this phase is the solar alignment with the cosmic ether, which is at the core of the galactic center, which represents pouring of healing spiritual waters into the earth and humanity from Mother God. Previously, these waters were corrupted by entrapping the Mother Principle and Gold Ray Seraphim on earth. So this was inspired by some ES material, and Lisa. So in its highest expression, this constellation represents the potential blueprint of divine perfection in a human being. It also represents the pending birth of the Christ child growing in the womb of the Divine Mother. Negative alien agenda had control over aspects of the 12 constellation transmissions, which had resulted in more extreme negative polarities in the world of forces, in order to achieve their intended objective of control over matter forms, and to influence humanity into the negative polarity, and to use planetary dark matter for running AI machinery. They take advantage of our wounds and how we're unconscious to them. So this is the beauty of this time of healing, because this is how we collapse it. We are not being taken advantage of. We're not being harvested and siphoned. We're not having trigger reactions that create a big amount of loosh for them to feast on. So the zodiac maps our journey through Earth's 12-phase matrix. The DNA is the key to unlocking our multidimensional embodiment. The tree grid is the framework through which it all functions. The 13th gate is the Sophia return, reclaiming her body, reclaiming the planet. And just like we're reclaiming our bodies, moving out toxicity, inversion, unresolved wounds. 14 and 15 are the reunion with the Christos and Source, forming the triple flame trinity within. So the upside down pentagram represents being trapped in physical matter, going into underworld labyrinth, and the Venus transits correct this. We have been in the process of turning it upright again, which allows the energy circulation to activate dormant DNA and galactic chakras. This is the soul alchemy. We are born into a huge wound. We are each called to come and heal. And so the storylines we live out are there to help us wake up and heal personally and things way beyond ourselves. Because we're the powers that be, they're the powers that stole. So regardless of what storyline we've been given, that is our challenge. That is our mission, to confront it, to tackle it, to correct the inversions, to rise above. And it's not, an accident, no matter how bad it gets, that it's just a part of that greater work that we're taught to, maybe misunderstand when we forget ourselves, when we forget why we came. So the Venus transits have been creating these corrections and has reversed this kind of mark of the beast, nullifying the possibility of total enslavement. The unconditional love of the mother and the Venus transits have formed a perfect pentagram in the sky that astronomers and astrologers have noted, that form the sacred geometry of a rose. So that Sophionic energy, the rose flames, the Magdalene archetype that lives within all of us, without needing to name it, is symbolic of the unconditional love of the mother that is preparing her body for planetary ascension. And it's her unconditional love that never left this experience and has always sought to reclaim her physical vessel and undo the reversal grid technology, through the conduits of her children, which is us, through living our authentic truth, through being willing to step out of that inversion and embody this current that moves through our hearts and moves through our being, to correct this, to reconnect with that ether, restore that mitochondrial DNA, and bring that ether element into the rest of our nucleic acids, earth, air, fire, water, to purify and decontaminate, which resolves geoengineering. So we got everything, in our hands, to really enjoy this. So Eisenhower had a relationship with Valiant Thor. I don't know how much time I have left, so I might just stop here. How much time? Okay. So Eisenhower was not simply a military strategist or a political figure. He was a timeline guardian. His documented and still being revealed communications with Val Thor, his refusal to surrender Earth's sovereignty, and the quiet formation of Earth Alliance and White Hat factions within the military were not passive chapters of history. So from what I've come to understand is he helped to seed this, but it was already in existence even before him, but it's, moving into new form. There was an unconditional surrender agreement in 1952 under Truman, where we surrendered to the Nazis, the interplanetary corporate conglomerate, Nazi-Draco alliance. So Eisenhower, when he came into office, was up against this, and with the help of Val Thor, he set this up covertly, and it still survives today. So the same year that he's been blamed for signing treaties with the Greys was actually when he ordered an invasion on the Dulce underground military base, and later ordered an invasion on Area 51. So I don't know how all of a sudden the Greada Treaty comes about, and from different whistleblowers and people that had major experience during this time of history said that the Greada Treaty was a cover narrative and a cover story, and it was MJ-12 that did it behind his back. And the original treaties and the abductions of humans started in the 1930s. And basically, they sold 90% of the population to off-planet beings, and it was going to culminate in a fake alien invasion to actually remove 90% of the population. I don't know how that was going to look. But through the help of Val Thor and appealing to the Guardians, and the fact that the Guardians already had the Covenant of Paladorian and the Emerald Order and agreements to be present on this planet, it just helped to, invoke that, which we need to do, right? And it wasn't just him. He was a voice for many people, and many like him were a voice for that, bringing that in just like we are, knowing that something had to be done because it was not looking good. That timeline was not looking good in what they had planned. And so my book goes into great detail about that. So Val Thor was indeed connected to higher benevolent groups, but his true alliance was with the guardians of the Christic blueprint, not the hierarchical federations that later claimed association. Eisenhower refused treaties that would compromise human freedom, especially those offered by Greys and deceptive factions posing as saviors. He held the line against the infiltration of negative ET alliances into Earth's military industrial systems. And Dan Cooper made it clear they spend millions, if not trillions, to not just this story, to create false narratives, rewrite history so that we're looking in the wrong direction and we're not even looking to ourselves. So it's never been about Eisenhower to me. It's about what he represents. It's about sovereignty. It's about all of us. And he was briefed that a descendant would come in. That's why they targeted me, to help bring about the truth, and that a whole team of us would come in. And we are that team, and we've all found each other. And when he was briefed about that, he was so happy to hear this, that the future looked bright, because we were going to come and we were going to be the ones to overthrow the deep state. Not to say that there aren't leaders and people that are maybe in that governmental structure that are doing it from the inside out, but he was very, very reassured. And that was a lot of the communication I was getting. And little whispers in my ear, like, you're not alone, you're going to find your soul family and like-minded people, and that it was going to be us, that we are doing it. We are collapsing that control matrix. We are, I don't want to say the new government, because that's not the right word, but we are the powers that be that are rising. And when governments can appreciate that and work with us, not the other way around, yeah, that's where we're heading. So it's very encouraging to see people's channels coming back. And I'm going to be speaking at this event in Germany. And Anja is here, who's hosting it. So I hope you guys can come to Germany. It's going to be in, yeah. So what are the dates? Like May 13th to 17th in Germany. And it's very centered around, Venus. And what's beautiful is Venus and the Venus transits, Val Thor. And supposedly, Venus was, or beings from Venus weren't really a part of the federations. And Val supposedly went rogue, and, wanted to assist. And it's really in the biggest deal is us remembering ourselves. So the warning about the military-industrial complex. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought by the military-industrial complex. He was one of the few men in power brave enough to call it out directly. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. Eisenhower was not simply concerned about war, but about the fusion of military, corporate, and technological interests that could override democracy, truth, and sovereignty. And I know I redundantly say that. They're the powers that stole. We're the powers that be. But look at us and how far we've come. We've been calling stuff out. We've been, really vocal about a lot of what this warning was about, that back then you would be offed or your family would be threatened. He couldn't really say much until his final speech, but he was able to set some things in motion connected to the positive military units that survive today. And there's so many of us. There's nothing they can do to stop this. And I redundantly say that we win the war on consciousness from within. It's been a war on consciousness. We are the walking embodiment of victory. When we collapse these inversions from within, we embody our truth, and we transparently work with whatever wounds come up, and we do something in order to direct it towards health and wellness, unity consciousness, healing fragmentation, and total soul retrieval. And the earth responds to us. And when we do this for ourselves, the earth has no choice but to reflect back to us a higher earth, a higher harmonic universe. And it's way more stable, just like true love is way more stable. You know that you can get through the ups and downs. You know you can have those difficult conversations, but you're ascending together. There's true love. You get closer as time rolls on. And we're in a relationship with creation. We build that bond with Mother Earth, with animals and plants and nature and the elements. That bond only gets stronger, and the frequency only raises in a more stable way. This is the bifurcation. The descending hub is low frequency, is totally unstable. Just like, again, metaphorically, like a bad partner. It's just a bumpy road, but there's no resolution. It just gets worse and worse. The red flags get worse and worse. And just like on the planet with the system and some of these false flags, I call these red flags bonfires that people are literally burning their hand on. It's like, is that enough for you? Is that enough to convince you that there's something seriously wrong here? But there's something seriously right, and that is who we are. We're bringing it in. So Heather Carlini from the Carlini Institute for Therapy, Research, and Transpersonal Education explains how photonic energy, the bright light seen at the time of a solar flare, works with us. So lower emotions are low frequency energy stored in our cells from past experiences and traumas that we have encountered and never processed. Photon energy is a much higher frequency energy that pulls up the lower emotional frequency so it can calibrate to the higher frequency. Thus, we find ourselves releasing emotions such as sadness and grief without really knowing why. And this is a part of, grid work, or if you're in certain locations and you notice this. The elements of our blueprint are interfaced in the cellular consciousness. And when the blueprint is amplified through photon energies, various elements of the blueprint leak into your consciousness, and we begin to remember our soul's purpose. So again, we're going to dip down, we're going to feel into that, we're going to bring it right back up. And that's part of like facing the chiron wounds that cause shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire. But through bringing it the unconditional love, through that mitochondrial repair of that fifth element, of that ether, we can bring it back to love. We can bring it back to love. And that's why relationships that are always wanting to work things out and talk things out and just, move through these challenges together is such a beautiful thing. And epigenetics. Science is proving that our body's ability to heal and repair itself is greatly affected by our beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and intentions, for they have a profound vibrational effect upon our continually evolving genetic code. We are the programmers of the code, and DNA activation is our software upgrade. So we get to change the script. This is the nature of the South Node Virgo, North Node Pisces, Mercury, physiology. How does the mind talk to the body? Our physical habits, our lifestyle, our work, our routine. What are we digesting? What are we allowing in? What are we shielding ourselves from? So when we change the dialogue, that's literally the epigenetics that are switching on our greater potential instead of looping in something that keeps us hooked in to these inversions that are literally falling away. And that's why, a lot of people are falling away with it. It's like a sinking ship. And people are rerouting in this time of bifurcation, where the bridge walkers that are connecting the old paradigm split off of the unstable descending timeline are helping bridge people to the ascending timeline. So a lot of people are called to be that bridge, to help, the sinking ship reroute to a much better trajectory. And as we switch on dormant DNA, you can correspond that with astro signs or just strands or dimensions. We are building the 3 levels of sacred marriage. Level 1, 6D, 7D, building the wings. Level 2, crystal lotus heart, 8D, 9D, which corresponds with the stargates in Tibet and China. And the infinity spiral. Level 3, Hyros Gamos, Christos hydroplasmic light, 10, 11, 12. And that's the Lyran system, the higher dimensions before we step down into these lower ones. But it's always been about relationship. And that's why some of my presentations have been called, DNA, the love story of creation. When we get out of this junk DNA and these false alliances or energetic cords with something that is causing us decline, and we break that bond, we're returning to love. And it's all about love and that inner union and that inner relationship. And there's the 8th and 9th chakra, an infinity spiral that goes around our head. And it's another masculine and feminine energy connected to balance. The morphogenetic chakras begin to galactivate. And this is usually when the psychic attack increases, when you start to switch this on. This is when they're like, oh man, they're out of our grip. But again, if we move through, which we have, and still are, perhaps, once you reach that, it's so much shifts in the physiology and just in one's embodiment. And that's what sound healing and other tools and modalities can help one achieve. So morphogenetic chakra 8 is the gold. Morphogenetic chakra 9 is the silver. Thymus, permanent seed atom of the crystal heart. The 9 is atomic doorway, mouth of God, projector of light consciousness. And this is moving into greater integration, polarity integration, out of the duality, out of the fragmentation, and into these dormant strands of DNA and chakras. So that here's a tree of life grid. So both of these are energetic synthesis. Lisa Renee pictures that I mentioned in the beginning. Here's the 12 tree grid. You'll notice that some tree of lives only have 10 spheres. And that's more symbolic of draconian DNA. It doesn't mean if you have a tree of life that only has 10 spheres that, you have draconian DNA or you're connecting into that, because it doesn't matter, because our consciousness overrides. But, might just add a few extra circles. It's like, woo. And so if you look at how it's cut, 3D, physical dimension, 3D, density 1, 1, 2, 3. Then you go into the 5D. Dimensions 4, 5, 6, semi-physical, right? But this is all within us to switch that on. Then we move into these higher earth energies from a very grounded approach to switching on what's dormant. 7, 8, and 9, 7D etheric dimensions, density 3, and then the 10, 11, 12. And that's all based in this hierogamic union within ourselves and the integration of polarity, which the South Node connecting to the North Node and integrating that polarity achieves. But right now we're doing the Virgo, Mercury into the Pisces, Neptune to restore the tree of life, restore heaven on earth as individuals that are living a life of peace and bliss. or bringing it back to that if we, get off center, if something throws us. And then the guardian founder race is the threefold flame, feline, avian, cetacean, blue ray, gold ray, violet ray, but it's really, the cosmic trinity, Mother, Father, Christ, Sophia. So I'm going to end with this because it's one of my favorite quotes from the Essene Gospel of Peace. So the law is living word of living God to living prophets for living men. And everything that is life is the law written. You find it in the grass, in the tree, in the river, in the mountain, in the birds of heaven, in the fishes of the sea, but seek it chiefly in yourselves. For I tell you truly, all living things are nearer to God than the scriptures, which is without life. God so made life and all living things that they might be the everlasting word, teach the laws of the true God to man and woman, of course. God wrote not the laws in the pages of books, but in your heart and in your spirit. They are in your breath, your blood, your bone, in your flesh, your bowels, your eyes, your ears. I'm just going to still flush the toilet. Your ears and every little part of your body. They are present in the air, in the water, in the earth, in the plants, in the sunbeams, in the depths, and in the heights. So that's all the elementals that we carry in the nucleic acids of our DNA. And the ether element, is purifying all of that. And we see that reflection in nature. And that's really where the living word of God is. And I know all of us love nature so much. And it's beautiful to see this because you probably wouldn't, if you shared that with somebody that lives by the book or lives by, a dogma, they might have, a bit of an issue with that at first. But what a beautiful thing, because that's where it is the most powerful, is in us. So this is my website, cosmicgaia.org. I hope you'll maybe join my Substack. I'm trying to build my Substack. I got my YouTube channel back, and I do subscription where we get on a Zoom call, we navigate the charts, we just pass the talking stick, we talk about what we're going through in the week, and I do check-ins and discounted sessions, and but I'm so grateful to be here with this beautiful community. I hope you got something good out of my presentation, and I thank you so much for coming to listen to me.